You don't see any opportunity to create a PS file manually. Why? Because we create it by using JCL. We schedule a job, and in that job we execute a program, and that program itself creates a file. But you need to know those basics. Whatever we have given in 3.2 option while creating a file, all those things we'll give it in a JCL. For example, I'm writing a program PGM1 where like this needs to create a file of customer data. Okay, so it extracts the data from a DB2 table and creates a file of customer data. So for this, you no need to go to 3.2 and create a file and give as input to your JCL. Instead of that, you mention in the JCL the file whichever I am giving is a new file and create it with so and so attributes. Like length is 80 and its record format is fixed block and it needs a space of 10 tracks and 10 secondary tracks. All those things, whatever we give in 3.2, those can be given in a JCL. For testing purpose only, for unit testing purpose, sometimes you will create a PS file using 3.2 option. Otherwise, in most of the cases, you don't create a PS file manually. You have a JCL, and in the JCL, we have some parameters to create it. Okay, anyway, like that we'll be discussing whenever we are discussing about the JCL. Right. Anybody gone through the naming convention? Yes. If you have not gone through, just try to get the information from the net and let us know tomorrow. Anyone? Okay. What I need is, what is the maximum length of the file and max length of each qualifier and max number of qualifiers and allowed characters and HLQ. Yeah, allowed characters is fine. This type of information I need.
Okay.
Right. Into COBOL. COBOL is like people call it as English like language. Why? Because let me take one example. So here, what I am doing is add entity. Move these are all COBOL statements. Add 22 WS number, move ready to WS name. These are variables. Okay. Subtract A from B. So by looking at the code, if you don't know COBOL as well, like you can relate it. Okay, we are adding 20 to some variable and moving something to something, and subtracting A from B. So every COBOL word or verb, every COBOL sentence, we can say sentence or statement will be looks like an English statement. So this is a statement at 22 number, and this is another statement. This is another statement. So we can easily relate the functionality of that particular statement. That's the reason like we call it as English like language. And the second characteristics of COBOL is we call it as a structured language. Why we call it as a structured language? Because it follows a specific structure. Specific structure in the sense, for example, Every COBOL program contains some divisions. Okay, each division will be separated by sections, and each section will be separated by a paragraph. And these paragraphs will be sentences, and these sentences will be again divided into statements. Okay, statements into words. So if you see any COBOL program, this structure will be followed. So there are different division, and each division it contains some either sections, some sections, and in each section some paragraphs, and in each paragraph sentences, statements, and so on. That's the reason we call it as a structured language. Okay, we'll see like what is section, what is paragraph when we discussing about the actual COBOL part. Okay, but division is the main one, and within this division it contains sections, and sections may contain paragraph, each paragraph sentences, statements, and words. So here some exceptions are there. For example, in each division either section can exist, in each division a section can exist, and within that section a paragraph can exist. But in most of the organization what they follow is in each division either a section they will write or a paragraph. Okay, sections and paragraphs they both work similarly. That's the reason some clients use only sections. Within section there won't be any other paragraph. And some clients like they only use paragraphs. They don't use sections. It's allowed. But the typical structure is this one: division, section, paragraph, and so on. Okay. Generally, in interviews or in your day-to-day coding life, these things are not required. Each division contains section, section contains paragraph. These things are not required. In interviews also, generally they don't ask these kind of things. But it's better to know. And one more thing about COBOL is people say it runs on standards. It means for each and everything, whatever we do. For example, if I want to define a variable in COBOL, there is a separate rule or standard. If I want to, like whether I should have a section or paragraph within a division, that is also a standard. Standard means it's not common to each and every organization. Standards are defined by their own clients. Whenever they are started coding, whenever they started their business using COBOL, like they write some standards saying that, for example, I need to define a variable called variable for the customer name. Okay, so I can define it in the, it's a variable, so I can define it in this way, some xxx. This is allowed. It's a character, so I can define a variable in this way with this name. But whenever I like somebody else came and trying to analyze the program, if he see this xxx, he won't understand the purpose of this variable. That's the reason like they put a standard or rule saying that each and every variable should have a meaningful name or meaningful abbreviation at least. Like that, for example, section. So for each section will contain, it contains a name. Okay, paragraph contains another name. So for these sections also, we cannot give our own names. So there is a standard defined within your organization saying that it should start with, every section should start with some number, 4-digit number, followed by a hyphen. Then its purpose, main process, something like this. Another paragraph section name is 2000. Read data. Okay, in the same way, everything, sentences, statements, everything should follow some standard. That's the reason people say like it runs on standards. Actually, this is good. Because like if you try to analyze a program, you need to understand by looking at the description or by looking at the variable names. And sometimes in COBOL, like we have some divisions, I said, right? Identification division is one of the divisions. And here we give program ID, cust update program. And after this, within comments, most of the organizations follow. This is comment. If we give star, it is a comment. So the brief description of the program will be written here. This is also again a standard. They'll write around 5 to 6 lines about the brief description of this paragraph. So what it does and what is the input and what are the things that it updates, something like that. They'll write it. So whenever somebody else goes and try to analyze this program, if he just need the overview of the program. For overview of the program, he don't need to get into the program logic and analyze that. He just need to, he can just see these comments and he can understand that. This is again standard. And in some organization, you don't believe. So these are the sections, right? On each section, above the section, we need to give a description for that section, what it is doing. For example, in this main process, I am reading a customer file and updating a DB2 table with so and so data. So those type of details above to this paragraph within comments I need to give. So this is a good practice because like while analyzing or while reverse engineering the program, it is like we can easily understand. Even that non-COBOL guys also can understand the overall functionality of the program. Okay, so whenever you got an opportunity to write a new program, don't give your own names. So check your old programs. Like every time, like we may not get the standards document. So check your old programs. Like whatever the standards they follow, we just need to follow the same standard. So this is how generally this is how we declare a variable in COBOL. And another standard is like all picture classes should start in the same column. That means I'm declaring another variable. My picture class should not start here. Okay, it should start the agreed standard column. That is another standard. Like that, there are many standards maintained by organizations. And some people say for one, I should not give it as a simple one. You should give 0, 0. That's again another standard. Like that, it maintains many standards. Okay. So whenever you got the opportunity, you just need to check the old programs or standards before proceeding with your coding. Okay, right. It's about some points about COBOL. Let me open the mainframes and show you. In every organization, wherever you go, the screen looks like this one only. Okay, this is my primary option menu, right? It looks like this. Maybe some options over here may be changed, but everything looks like this only. The standard time, the time, this time is the time of your mainframe system, not your local machine time. Okay. So if your mainframes, if you are working for a US client, generally the mainframes will be located in US. The timing will be US time. So you can see that time over here. Okay, not our local machine time. Right. So we have created a PDF. So we'll write a COBOL program there. So how you will open a PDF whichever you have created by using 3.4 option. 3 followed by 4, or we can directly give 3.4. I'm entering here. mf24.test. So this is my PDS name. I have created two programs, COBOL 1 and COBOL 2. Right. I'm deleting this. This is not a COBOL code. Right. So let us write a COBOL program. So how to insert a line? You just need to give I. And here you need to give identification division. The first division is I'll tell the divisions of the COBOL. And move A to be something like we can write. Okay. But here what I want to explain is this is your COBOL editor, right? And this COBOL editor is divided into some three parts. You cannot start your coding from here. There are certain rules to start your COBOL code. Okay, you cannot start it from your starting of the window. Okay, within this 80 byte length, total is 80 of length, right? This 80 length is divided into three parts. Okay, first 6. Yeah, till 7 it is one part. 1 to 6 is one part, and 7th is separate one, and 8 to 11 is another one, and 12 to 72 is another one, and 73 to 80 is another one. Let us see the COBOL editor divisions. Division actually. We call it as coding sheet. You're able to see my screen, right? Guys, Hitendra?
Yes, Maida.
Yes, we can have.
Yeah, this is the 80 byte length, whichever I just showed you. Right. So it is divided into four parts. The first one is column numbers, and second one we call it as indicator area, 7th column, and 8 to 11 we call it as area A, and 12 to 72 we call it as area B, and 73 to 80 we call it as identification area. Okay, how many parts? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. Okay, so 1 to 6 it is column numbers. So for your coding purpose, you never use this one. You should not use column numbers part. That means you should start your coding from 7th column. It is for system purpose. Okay, to identify something or to give the error logs, they use these column numbers. Our compiler uses these column numbers and produces some listing based on these column numbers. So as a developer, as a coder, you don't need to worry about this 1 to 6. Every time you should leave these 1 to 6 columns and start your coding from next line onwards. Even I said like you can start your coding from 7th column, but 7th column we call it as an indicator area. If, for example, you want to comment your line, comment your code, you use a star over here in the 7th column. That means if you give a star, whatever you have coded after this lines, after this column are commented. I'll show you. This is not how you code it, as I said. 1 to 6 I left it, and 7th one, for example, I have given identification division. And whenever you write a COBOL code, what you need to do is you just need to highlight COBOL. You need to write a command called hi COBOL. so that it highlights all the COBOL reserved. This is my COBOL reserved identification division, right? So it highlights it. So it's better to highlight it every time, so that you can easily identify by looking at the code. For example, I have written it in this way. Somehow in a hurry, I have written it in this way. It should be a keyword, but it's showing in a different color. Okay, easily you can identify saying that there is something wrong here. Okay. One minute. Okay, as I said, the seventh column is an indicator area. So I want to comment this line. So I can simply give star over here so that it is commented. As it is commented and I have highlighted the COBOL, so the color is changed. So commented lines will be shown in this color. Again, this is the default one, the coloring code default one. If you want to change, you can change it. But generally we never change it. Right? These first 6 columns are column numbers, and the 7th one is indicator area. Only star is allowed, or what? Anything else is allowed over here? Hyphen is also
Slash
allowed.
or something.
Yeah, slash is also allowed. What we call it as slash n. Okay, good allowed. So why? Because like, for example, I am doing something and it is exceeding 72. I want to continue it in the next line. Then this is used. Okay, another one is forward slash. This is again a comment.
If you want to comment multiple lines, we use forward slash.
Okay, I don't know actually. So for example, multiple lines in the sense,
Multiple lines if you want to comment it. I mean 2-3 lines.
this is also for comment purpose. I'll check and let you know. We never generally we don't use this one for comments purpose. We use only star.
Okay.
But these are the only 3 characters which I saw are allowed in the 7th column. And the 7th one we call it as indicator area. Sometimes in interviews they may ask like what are the different areas in your coding sheet. So the first one is column numbers, indicator area, and the next one is area A. Where is that? Yeah. From 8 to 11 we call it as area A. They have some specific meaning. Give me a minute. Okay. So they like in area A, we can code only some specific things, like only the headers. Headers in the sense, we have 4 divisions. For each division, we have header. The division headers we can write in area A, and we can write the section headers, paragraph headers, and also we can write variable names, 0-1 variable names. The elementary level items we can define starting from area A. I'll explain what is 0-1 level items, but now like you just remember in area A we can write all the headers. It can be a division header, it can be a section header, paragraph header. Along with headers, some variables can be defined here. 0-1 level variables or elementary level variables can be defined in area A. Okay, And in area B starts from 12 to 72. So all other things, all normal coding. For example, you want to write a business functionality. So you are adding A to B and you are moving something there and you are displaying something. Those type of coding, everything can be declared under area B. Everything can be coded under area B, right? And in 73-80, we call it as identification area. So in older days, it used to have some significance, but with modern compilers, the 73-80 columns has no significance. In older days, to identify while printing, to identify something for identification purpose, they used to use this 73-80. But now, even though we don't have significance, we have the codes from older days, so they have kept it like that only. Either developers or the system don't use this 73-80 in modern compilers or with the modern mainframes. Okay, and this one we use, the system uses these column numbers, but as a developer you don't need to worry about this one. You just need to leave it as is and start your coding from area A. And whenever you need to comment or indicate something, you need to use this indicator area, right? Any doubts here? These line numbers will be automatically generated by some command. I forgot that. Right. So the command is number on std standard COBOL. You write it, it will be automatically generated. And this one also, again, some standard, some organizations say whenever you code your program, you should on this standard COBOL so that these lines will be generated. You see, this like identification area 73-80 also, some lines will be generated, but you don't use it. You stop your coding till 72 only. You cannot proceed further. The navigation part, you know, right? F7, F8 is for
Yes.
and F8, F10 and F11, and F3 is to go back. This is about coding sheet. So always, like if you try to code it from here, identification division, if you try to code it in area A and compile the program, it gives saying that identification division not started in area A, something like that. It gives an error after you compile your program. Okay, you know the process. Like, let me explain another basic process. Okay, say you got a requirement. First, what you will do, you start coding and coding is completed. You completed the coding, and then it needs to go through a process called compilation. It needs to, the program needs to compile. What happens in the compile? The high level language, whichever we have written in COBOL language, will be converted into machine level language. The output of a compile is a load module. In mainframe terminology, we call it as load module. Okay, this load module contains the executable code of our COBOL code. Once you code it in a PDS or in any version control tool. Once you code the program and once you compile it, a load module will be generated. Once the load module is generated, you don't need to worry about this COBOL code. Okay, every time to execute your COBOL code, you use this load module instead of the actual COBOL code. Because like COBOL code is for a developer purpose. You develop your business functionality using this high level language. But to run it, it needs to be converted into a machine level language. That one will be done by a compiler. A compiler program. Generally, how you will compile in mainframes? Either you will have a JCL provided by IBM, or you will have a version control tool. Tools. Common version control tools are Endeavor and Changeman. So if you have this tool Endeavor and Changeman, you no need to manually do the compile. Whenever you add your COBOL code to this particular version control tool, it gets automatically compiled and a load module will be generated. Load module will be generated in a separate PDS with the same name as your COBOL name. So if my COBOL code name is PGM1, a load module with the name PGM1 will be generated and stored in a separate load module PDS. And that load module PDS will be used to execute your COBOL program. So this is a common procedure to execute any COBOL program. Okay, code it, compile it, and then run it. For compilation, the process may be different from organization to organization or client to client. Okay, in my previous organization, actually, I was not having any Endeavor or Changeman. So we used to store the COBOL codes in a PDS itself. Generally, we don't store the COBOL codes, production COBOL codes in a PDS. It will be stored in Endeavor or Changeman, basically a version control tool. But in my previous organization, we were not having a version control tool. They used to just maintain it in a PDS. And for compilation purpose, they have created a JCL by taking it from IBM. And whenever we want to completed the coding, we used to execute this JCL so that a load module used to generate it. Okay. Right. So we saw the coding sheet, and now we'll get into the basics of a COBOL program. As I mentioned earlier, every COBOL program is a structured one. So it contains divisions, and within the division sections, paragraphs, and so on. Right? So divisions are the main part, and COBOL contains 4 divisions. The first division is identification division. Second one is environment division. Data division. So whenever you want to write a COBOL program, these 4 divisions needs to be included. And in this, some are optional divisions. But in 95% of the COBOL programs, all 4 divisions will be present. Each division has its own significance. And in this, identification division is a mandatory one, and procedure division is a mandatory one. Data division and environment division are optional ones. Okay, we'll see like what is the purpose of identification division. As its name suggests, it is to identify the COBOL program to your system, mainframes. means it gives a name to the COBOL program. It also identifies the author of the program. It also identifies like when it has been written, date written. And date compiled. So you got the purpose of this identification division, right? So it is to identify your program to the mainframe system. It identifies your COBOL program by giving a name to that. Okay, your compiler or your mainframe system every time identifies it by using this program ID only. So within this identification division, we call these things are program ID is a section, author is another section, date written is another section, date compiled is another section. So in this division, there are 4 sections, and here only program ID is the mandatory one. These are all optional ones. Most of the organization only till program ID they'll code it, and they left other things as they don't code it. Okay, it is for documentation purpose only. Documentation purpose in the sense, whenever you see the program, you need to know like when this has been written, who written this program. Generally, in author, either we give our name, developer name, or the mainframe ID will give. And some people give the organization ID. For example, if I am working for Bank of America client from Capgemini, so here I'll give Capgemini or CG, something like that. Okay, again it depends. It is a standard what to give over here. Right. Date written is nothing but when you started coding this one and when you have compiled it. Compiled means you completed your coding and then you compiled it successfully without any errors. That is the date of compilation. Okay. That is identification division, and it is a mandatory division and the first division of your COBOL. And some people will also give it as ID division. The short form is ID division. This is also a meaningful, this is also a valid one for identification division. Okay, don't be confused if you see ID division, it's identification division. Right? Environment division. So environment division, it's an optional one. Okay, optional one. But whenever you have files in your COBOL program, so without this environment division, the files cannot be used. Okay, for example, I am reading a customer data file in my COBOL program and updating it in a database or generating a report. So I need to read the file. Basically, I need to access that file in my COBOL program. Then this environment division is mandatory. Without this, you cannot access the file. But theoretically, environment division is an optional one. Data division is also optional. But if you with only identification division and procedure division, without declaring a variables or without having files, what you will write? Nothing you can write except this displays. This is my something. Except this one, you cannot write a business function. That's the reason I was telling. In most of the applications, you will, in all the programs, even though it is an optional one, you will find a data division. Okay, But if you don't have files, like you may not find an environment division. Okay. And the next one is data division. Data division again is an optional one. All the variables. So you might have like working in different languages, and in every language, like we need to define some variables for our internal purpose. As an example, I am reading a file and I need to do some calculation on that file data. So I need to store it temporarily in my program. All the temporary variables, or we call in mainframe terminology, we call it as working variables. All the working variables we need to define in the data division. Basically, all the variables. Whatever you want to use it in your COBOL program, you need to define it in the data division. Okay. And it has different section. Environment division also has different sections for different purpose. Data division also has different divisions for different purpose. We'll see that. But in data division, only data will be defined. Different types of data will be defined in different sections. Okay. And the last mandatory division is procedure division. It's a mandatory one. Without this, you cannot implement any business functionality, because everything, the business logic, will be written in the procedure division. Before to this, all three divisions, the first one is for identification purpose. Second one is to define the environment variables and to define the files over there. And the third one is to define the variables which we are using. But the fourth one is we'll use all these things, all files and variables, and we'll write the business functionality. Okay. And within this procedure division, they won't, like we don't have any reserved sections. For example, if you take the data division, we have different sections, predefined sections. Working storage section is one of the section, predefined section, or COBOL reserved section, and another one is linkage section. Also, another one is file section. These are not user defined sections. This is a predefined section. But in procedure division, you don't find any predefined sections. All the sections are paragraphs that are there in procedure division or user defined ones. Means you need to define a section, and within that you need to write the business functionality. And within the section, you can define your own paragraphs, user defined paragraphs, and you need to write your own code. Whereas in other divisions, that's not allowed. Only the predefined sections are allowed. Okay, any doubts till this point? Okay, so in identification division, we discussed all the parameters like program ID, program name. Okay, this program ID is an important and mandatory one. You need to give your program name over here. Generally, let me open it. Identification division, program ID, PGM1. This one and this member name should be same. Okay. One. Here, as a standard, I'll give a comments like this. Here I'll write something like this. We need to write this is a standard, something like that we can write. Okay, so basically this member name and this program ID name should be same. After that I'll give something else, and then the next division I will start. Environment division. Okay, within this environment division we have different sections. The first one is input output section. One more is there, input output section. Yeah, let us go through this. Identification division, we have program ID, author, installation, date written. These are all things, but only program ID is mandatory. Yeah, configuration section. Right. In environment division, we have two sections. Input output section is the one, and another one is configuration section. These section divisions and sections within that are important. In identification division, what are the things that we can code, and in environment, what are the things that we can code? Because this is one of the basic interview question. If they feel like you are not answering some COBOL verbs, they'll come to this. What are the divisions that we have? Within the division, what are the different sections? How we will use it? Within this configuration section, we have source computer. Few paragraphs we have. Source, object computer. Okay, so environment division is an optional one, and environment division is the only division in COBOL code which is mission dependable. Mission dependable. Mission dependable in the sense, for example, I am working for a client called HSBC, and I have written a program of some 30,000 lines. Okay, it's running over there. And the same program, if I want to use in some other organization or another mainframe install, then the only division that I need to change is environment division. Everything else will be same. In environment division, the source computer and object computer needs to be changed. Then only it will run, otherwise it will give error. Okay, that's the reason environment division is called the mission dependent division. Okay, because like whenever you want to install the same program in some other mainframe installation, then this environment division needs to be changed. Okay, so within this environment division, the details whichever I told contains the configuration section. The mission details will be coded in this configuration section under source and object computer. Source computer is IBM 39. Object computer is IBM 30. So this is not user defined name. This is also not user defined name. So these are the names of your mainframe installation. For example, if I am running my production environment has some specific name, mainframe name, that one you need to give over here. And frankly speaking, as a developer, you don't need to worry about this. You just need to copy your old program's environment division configuration section and you need to code it. If you have to code it, that means this configuration section is an optional one. If you have coded environment division within this configuration section, you may or may not code according to your standard. If your standard says you need to code it, you can code it. If your standard says it's an optional one, you can ignore it. Okay, if you have to code it, you just check your old code and copy it from there, because all the programs will run under same mainframes. Right? What is source computer and what is object computer? Source computer is where your program has been compiled. That means coded and compiled. And object computer is nothing but where your actual program is running. In most of the cases, this source and object computer will be same. In case wherever, like as I said, like if you want to install this same program in some other mainframe installation, then this object computer needs to be changed, as this has been coded somewhere and you are running it in somewhere. So you need to change that. Otherwise it won't run. Okay, you got it. What the purpose of configuration section, right? The basic configuration related details like source computer and object computer, where you have coded and compiled it and where you are running it. Those details will be here. Okay, right. In environment division itself, we have another section called input output section, where you have files. Those files will be defined over here. So within this input output section, we have some paragraphs called file control, but I'll explain how to define a file whenever we deal with the files concept. But for now, you just need to remember within this environment division, we have a section called input output section, and this is to define the files in your COBOL program. Okay, how to define, we'll see later. Okay, any doubts in environment division? Why I'm specifically asking is these are some of the basic interview questions.
As of now, it's clear.
So the next important division is data division. Theoretically, as I said, it's an optional one, but without this data division, you cannot implement any business functionality. Okay, so practically in every COBOL program, you will find this data division. And within this data division, we have three sections. The first one is file section. Working storage section, and the next one is linkage section. File section, whenever you have files, you will define over here, and the file related variables, whatever the variables that are related to these files will be defined in this file section. Not only definition of the file variables, it also identifies the physical file over here. It also gives a file structure to that one. So for now, anyway, like we'll be discussing about this while we're discussing about the files. But for now, you just need to remember in data division, the file section is for the file related stuff. If you want to define any file related stuff, it is file section. That means whenever you have files, this input output section, file control is mandatory. Along with that, in data division, this file section is mandatory. If you don't have files, no need to code this file section. It's an optional one. And the next one is working storage section. All the working variables, all the temporary variables will be coded over here. Okay. You know the concept of working variables or temporary variables, right? So I'm reading a file. I'm reading for example, I have a file called file. In this, the first four digits are file employee number, followed by his name, and followed by his salary. Okay. And the second employee and his name, followed by his salary. Something like this. I have a flat file or sequential file, and within this program, I'm reading it. I issued a read command on this file, and I want to do some computations on this salary. Maybe like I want to add some based on this salary, so that like I need to do some calculations. So for that, what I need to do, I need to store this salary temporarily in my program so that I can do calculations on this value. So what I do is I'll declare a variable called ww salary and its length. So these details we'll see how to declare the variables. But for this purpose, I have declared a variable called salary, and while reading, I'm reading it into this temporary variable. And I'll do all the calculations on this, and I'll apply a bonus, and the result I'll write it into another file and send it. So the purpose of this variable is temporary. Within this program, based on the like to do some computations or to do some movements of a data of any data, we use these variables, temporary variables. Basically, all these working variables will be defined in this working storage section. What about linkage section? Sometimes we may get the data from external systems to this COBOL program. For example, this is COBOL program 1. So I can get this data from another program to this program. And sometimes whenever I'm running the program using JCL, I can supply some data to this program. Okay. While executing this program through JCL, I can supply some data. And for example, I am executing one program from another program. So from PGM1 to within this PGM1, I am executing another program called PGM. While calling this program 2 from program 1, I can supply some data to this program so that it takes the data as input and it executes further. Like that, from few external sources like JCL or another program, I can give some input to my program. So whenever I am getting the data from external sources, I need to capture that in some variables. Those type of variables can be captured only in the linkage section. Okay. For example, I am getting employee number from JCL. So I need to define a variable over here. Then only I can access the supplied data. Otherwise, I cannot access it. All the external variables should be defined in the linkage section. Okay. You got what is external variables, right? There are different ways that a program can receive the data. Apart from files, it can receive the data from different sources. So those variables needs to be defined over in linkage section. Right. So we completed data division. It's completely for data defining the variables, either a file section, file related variables, or temporary variables, or external variables. Okay. Then the procedure division is for writing your COBOL code. All the code like moving A to B, adding then something to something. If you want to perform anything, everything needs to. Basically, the business functionality will be written in procedure division. This business functionality can be written by using the linkage section variables, working story.
They're asking for a quick call. Can I drop off?
Yeah. This is for today. It's done. So we'll meet tomorrow. Mandeep, like if you have any queries, you can stay back. Otherwise, we'll cancel it. fill in the call.
Mahendra, I just have one doubt. ఈ మెయిన్ ఫ్రేమ్ ఈ ఐడియా ఉంది కదా, మీరు పెన్ డ్రైవ్లో తీస్తా ఉన్నారు, అది అది అసలు ఎక్కడ తీసుకోవాలి? అది నేను ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయడానికైనా కావాలి కదా.
కావాలి, ఇది బాగుంటుంది. నాకు అంటే ఇదివరకు ట్రైనింగ్ చెప్పినప్పుడు వాళ్ళు చెప్పి ఎస్ఆర్ నగర్లో దొరుకుతుందని చెప్పి.
మీ వాయిస్ వినపడట్లే, ఒక్క నిమిషం.
అది నేను తెలుసుకొని చెప్తామండి.
ఏమన్నారు?
తెలుసుకొని చెప్తా అంటున్నా. ఎగ్జాక్ట్ ఎస్ఆర్ నగర్ అని చెప్పారు కానీ నాకు ఎగ్జాక్ట్ గా తెలియదు. అది లాస్ట్ టైం ఇంకో క్యాండిడేట్ అతను నాకు తెచ్చిచ్చింది, ఆయన అడిగి చెప్తుంది.
ఓకే, ఎందుకంటే ఈ సాటర్డే ఫ్రీ ఉండే ఇలా తీసుకుందామని.
ఒకసారి మీరు ప్రాక్టీస్ చేస్తే ఇది అట్లీస్ట్ అంటే మనకు నావిగేషన్ ఈజీ అయిపోతే.
కమాండ్స్ మీరు ఫాస్ట్ టైప్ చేసేస్తుంది కదా, ఒకవేళ వస్తే ప్రాక్టీస్ అయితే ఈజీ ఉండదు అని. ఇంక కమాండ్స్ మీ దగ్గర ఏమన్నా మాన్యువల్ గానీ ఏమన్నా ఉందా? ఒకవేళ వస్తే నేను ఒకవేళ అది ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయాలంటే.
ఉంది నా దగ్గర మెటీరియల్ బాగానే ఉంది, ఇస్తా. మెటీరియల్ ఉంది.
ఓకే ఉంటే
ఉన్నాయి చాలా.
ఓకే,
ల్యాబ్ ఎక్సర్సైజెస్ కూడా ఉన్నాయి, కావాలంటే ఈచ్ టాపిక్ వైజ్ అవి ఇస్తాను. దాని తర్వాత ప్రాజెక్ట్స్ కూడా ఉన్నాయి కొన్ని, ఒక 4-5 ప్రాజెక్ట్స్. అది కూడా వచ్చేసి
ఎందుకంటే నేను కంప్లీట్ బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్ కదా, అది అర్థం కావడానికి కొంచెం టైం పడుతుంది.
ఒకసారి మీకు పక్కన డాక్యుమెంట్ ఉండి Mainframe యాక్సెస్ ఉంటే ఈజీ అయిపోతుంది.
ఓకే, థ్యాంక్స్ అమ్మ, నేను డ్రాప్ అవుతాను.